Hello everyone, it's me again, Geisha Dedra, back with another video, so thank you so much for tuning in. Some of you may be unaware that Japan, like many other countries in the world, have their own native people, so let's learn about them today. I present to you the Indigenous peoples of Japan. Without further ado, let's get started. The Indigenous people of Japan can be divided into two main groups. First, we have the Ainu, or Ezo people, who can be found on the island of Hokkaido and other prefectures in northern Japan. Secondly, we have the Ryukyuan, or also known as the Ryukyuan people of southern Japan, around Okinawa and other places in the Kyushu region. Next, let's talk about the history. How did these indigenous people get to Japan in the first place? It is an island after all. The exact date that the Ainu people came over to Japan is unknown. However, it is assumed that they arrived on their ships from Russia around the 9th century or slightly before. And to this day, you can find people who are of Ainu descent in Russia. On the other hand, the Ryukyuan people came to Japan from China through Korea about 30,000 years ago. Their ethnic name is derived from the Chinese name for the islands, Ryukyu, also pronounced as Luchu and Liuqiu. Now let's move on to the language. The language of the Ainu is called Ainu Itak. Let's listen to an example of Ainu Itak here. If you don't speak Japanese, then you probably won't be able to pick up the differences between Ainu Itak and regular Japanese, but let's do it one time for the culture.
시네헤카치 이소이타크 프레피라코탄타 안헤카치 크네르웨네 나아크포니타 키세온나이타 시노파테크키르웨네.
Ainu Itak is seen as a hallmark part of their cultural heritage. Although Ainu Itak and the Japanese language may sound similar to a Westerner's ear, to a Japanese person, it really might as well be gibberish, because the languages are that different. And in fact, many Japanese people of Ainu heritage have to spend many years studying under elders or taking formal classes to learn this language. The language of the Ryukyuan people is called Ryukyu Goha or Ryukyu Shogo, also known as Shima Kotoba or island speech. Although the Ryukyuan people have a similar heritage, they hold many different languages depending on the island they reside. There are 10 major Ryukyuan languages in total: Kikai, Amami, Toku no Shima, Okin no Rebau, Yoron, Kunigami, Okinawan, Miyako, Yaeyama, and Yonaguni. Now, let's move on to culture. The Ainu people have a very distinct culture that values nature as its core. It can be best explained as,
but I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name.
This belief in the interconnectivity of plants, animals, and people can be seen in the way that they live their lives. In the Ainu culture, traditional dances are performed at family events and festivals, like weddings, birthdays, and funerals. There are various crafts, such as wood carving and embroidery, that incorporate a very unique and geometric pattern. Ainu are also people that utilize oral tradition, using stories to pass down knowledge from generation to generation. As for the Ryukyuan people, their culture is based around the idea of ancestor worship. The cultural practices of the Ryukyuan people is heavily influenced by traditionally Chinese religions, like Taoism and Confucianism. One interesting part about Ryukyuan culture is that they put a strong emphasis of women in leadership. It wasn't uncommon to find a Luchuan woman as a guardian, a shaman, or the head of her household. And although the family lineage tends to be patrilineal, or based on the husband's family, there are also cases where the family lineage is matrilineal, or based on the wife's family. Another interesting component of Luchuan culture is the art of tattooing. Tattooing of the hands, wrists, and arms was extremely symbolic. This was a marker of a woman's spiritual awakening, and in their culture, was one of the most important milestones in a woman's life. Additionally, the Luchuan people have their own unique instruments and distinctive song and dance. Let's take a look here. Now, let's get a little more political and talk about nationality. For the indigenous peoples of Japan, nationality has been a bit of a tricky subject. As time moves forward and the newer generations integrate more and more with the modern Japanese population, the use of indigenous languages and the practicing of traditional culture reached record lows and ultimately hit a crisis point. Thanks to the tedious efforts of various individuals, the indigenous people of Japan finally gained legal recognition in April of 2019, and this was a huge win for them. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about pop culture. Images of Japan's indigenous people can be found in anime, manga, video games, TV shows, and movies. Here are a few examples that you might know of. I'd also like to share a personal recommendation of mine. If you're interested in getting some in-depth experience with Ainu culture and people, then check out Ainu Mosir on Netflix. The story follows a young Japanese middle school boy named Kanto who lives in Hokkaido, Japan. In the movie, we follow Kanto through his journey of learning more about his cultural heritage as an Ainu person. We get a closer look at traditions, rituals, and the Ainu language. We get to view their way of life in their own words. As mentioned, this movie is up on Netflix, but I'm not sure for how long, so if you're interested, then check it out sometime soon. Well, that's all for today. I hoped you learned more about Japan's indigenous people. So if you like this video, then like it. And if you want to see more, then hit subscribe and become part of the YouTube fam. I hope you all have a good day or a good night, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!